Today's topic is feeling spiritually lost and finding your way. But for some reason, I just kind of feel like we want to start at the end of that story, which is the finding your way part. A lot of times, we make this really difficult. Finding your way in some respects is a conceit to the ego that thinks it needs to have to go somewhere. And that, of course, is a problem because there's nowhere to go. And in all the ways that the ego creates problems for us, it can keep us stuck in these loops going round and round and round and round and round, trying to get to some point in time, some level of self-acknowledgement or external acknowledgement where you can say, haha, I've made it. I've found my way. I've got what I want. I found meaning. I found purpose. I'm always picking up meaning and purpose because they're completely ego ideas. In many respects, the search for meaning or purpose is another mask for this deeper fear, this deeper sense that we are not okay. Today's blog post, or not today's blog post, but this week's blog post was around facing self-hatred. And the core of self-hatred is simply the statement, I am not okay. And there's really only one word in there that's really problematic, and that's the not. The not stuck in that statement, the not stuck in all of us that is saying, I am not okay. And because we believe that, we start to get lost. So the spiritual path, as always, is this turning back towards ourselves, towards all those ways where we're rejecting who we are, where we're rejecting what already is. Right? So that's how we find our way. We return to that not. And of course, is the beauty of that statement that you take that not out, then it becomes I am okay. And then as you go deeper, you realize you don't even need the okay. You can just be. It's just the I am. A statement of duality, the I, the separateness, because we are separate, right? That's part of our exploration as human beings, is we have this ability and opportunity to be separate. So that's the I. And the am, the non-duality, that being that's always here, that's never apart from us, it's never separate. And that, of course, is the place we are never lost from. How could we be? Even when we feel like we're lost. And so this is the interesting dance. And it's always important to push you back towards that deeper truth that you are never lost. That the lost idea is a concept. And it's also a feeling. And I'm going to talk more about that too, because feelings are interesting. Feelings often underpin our ideas. And that's actually what we really want to address. At least that's what, when you address it, that feeling, that idea of lostness goes away. So that's the truth, that you're always here, you're always now. You're never cut off from being ever. And I want to use that truth because it immediately illuminates all the objections in your mind. And I encourage you to just breathe into that. So we're going slowly, there's no rush. There's nowhere to get to anyway. At the end of this, you'll have more ideas, but you won't be more you. You'll still be you, just as you are now. But as you breathe in and you feel these objections, well, I don't like this about myself, or this doesn't feel right, or I think I need that. That's all the stuff that's part of your not. And I'm going to use this pun a lot, right? Not K-N-O-T and N-O-T. That one little knot in there that says that I am not okay creates a wealth of problems, including the sense that we're lost. We have to ask ourselves, so what does it mean to be lost? Is it really an idea, or is it a feeling? In my experience is that it's the feeling of being lost that we don't like. And that can be a very different feeling for all of us. And that was something I was pointing out in the announcement that I sent out, that sometimes when we start to feel lost, it's because we're now aware of the truth. And that happens in the awakened state. that when we wake up and we start to look around and we see all the things that we've been doing that have grown out of this knot and have created these tangles of vines and thorns and things that have ensnared us and that we've ensnared ourselves with, we suddenly realize that we're lost. And there can be a bunch of different qualities to that, from that sudden deeper drive that wants to find itself, wants to find the truth that emerges. And this is very true in the awakened state, but it runs up against the unconscious ego self that is so committed still to all these things. And so that commitment in the awakened space between the unconscious ego that we're still caught up in and that true awareness is part of what creates the lost feeling, because usually this means we're aligning ourselves with the unconscious ego and we're trying to justify the life and the beliefs and the commitments and try to make it work with the deeper truth inside us. And it doesn't work. It's never going to work. And this leads to deeper feelings of loss. The more you hold on to the unconscious ego, the greater and greater pain comes your way, because then you start to feel sort of apathetic, or you're pulled in two different directions. If you're feeling pulled in two different directions, this is simple. You go with it. That's the direction to go. Anything outward to try and make other people like you or be like you or approve of your path, or if you're worried about being weird in the spiritual path, that's all going to get in your way, because that's all ego nonsense. And as I like to commonly reinforce to people, that all the people in your life are still going to fall into the same main buckets regardless of what you do. There are going to be people who like you, and there are people who don't like you, and there are going to be people who are neutral. And those are your three main categories. And that's never going to change. Doesn't matter how spiritual or awakened or whatever you are. So in the lostness I'm describing first, right, there's going to be several kinds I'm going to talk about, but this lostness in the awakened space, it has that quality of being pulled in different directions and not wanting to let go. It has that quality of needing to let go. And so there can be a little bit of an urgency to this one. So you can kind of feel that heightened sense of, I need to figure this out. That may not be in other places, where others are more stagnant feelings of being lost, where you just kind of feel like you're sinking. And this can also happen as your life becomes more swampy and bogged down. Yes, I'm full of puns today. So you're more bogged down in these ideas. So you're trying to be attractive, you're trying to have money, you're trying to have a certain type of family, right? The usual Western stuff that we think we need, or whatever's going on in your culture that says that you have to do this to be okay. That's what those statements are saying, to be okay. They're also tied up into some deeper things around ideas around survival, which is what makes anything that's attached to that particularly powerful, like money. People attach that to survival. So you just keep getting more and more bogged down, and some part of you, some amount of awareness, starts to feel this. This feeling can feel very trapped. You can feel very trapped in this sense of lostness, where you're just like, I just have no idea what to do. This happens for a lot of people. You have that little seed of consciousness sprouting that gives you just enough sense that something is not, it's not right, but you don't really understand what's not right. And so you just kind of feel more that sense of like tightness in the trappedness, or you feel just really heavy and stagnant, right? So there's feeling qualities, and I always like to point people towards this, because our body is very wise. It will tell us a lot about how we really feel. You can try and talk your body into certain feelings, and you can obviously stimulate it with all sorts of different substances. But when we get clear, this is another reason why I always talk about getting rid of toxins from your body. This is why spiritual traditions tell you these things. It's like they don't do a good job of explaining why they're telling you. They just say this is right or wrong. But we get rid of the toxins, and we eat, in ways that feel true to us and fully nourish us. And that usually means we're in a lot of vegetable stuff. It just is for the human body. I'm not anti-meat or anything like that, but generally speaking, a lot of vegetables and grains and stuff like that takes care of a human body. It allows you to be clear. It allows you to feel yourself. When you can feel your body, you can address any issues that come up, and you can hear that inner wisdom. If you cannot feel your body and it's too full of sugar and alcohol and drugs and all these different things, you've lost one of your greatest tools to understand yourself and to understand life. And it immediately impacts everything else. It's going to immediately impact your emotional situation. It's going to impact your energetic feelings about life. And some of that's actually being done very deliberately but unconsciously by us, because when we have a lot of upset feelings inside, right, we're talking about the self-hatred, the knot, it feels terrible. We don't want to feel terrible. So we try to do things to feel better. So toning down, and this is definitely true for my empathic friends, people who are very energetically sensitive to what goes on with other people, emotionally, energetically, and so forth. They don't know how to handle what they're feeling on that level either, on top of all this, the knots inside. And so they're doing a lot of this toxification simply to not feel. This, of course, is a terrible thing to do to yourself, and it has huge health ramifications down the line. And then once you've done all this stuff on those levels, everything energetically and physically and emotionally is gunked up, then the mind is just completely cloudy, right? So this is now another quality of feeling lost, that you just are feeling so intoxicated by all this junk, emotional junk, physical junk, especially if you're not, able to exercise regularly and do those things to take care of your body. It just gets worse and worse. But then a little seed of consciousness seems to sprout. So this just is feeling terrible. The problem with a lot of people is they try to use what society's been telling them should make them feel happy, which still isn't making them happy, to try to get unlost. It's like, okay, well, I have to find my soulmate, right? And people do this to the spiritual path. I got to find my soulmate. I got to find my meaning, right? Those things are not going to help you. They can only offer a momentary respite. You have to go within. You have to deal with a toxified body and purify it. You have to go in and deal with the upset emotions from childhood, from your initial caregiving years, where people were taking care of you and you were building those deep attachments or not getting good attachments, and how that impacted you emotionally. There are a lot of different levels that need to now be addressed to clarify what's going on inside. And that's also such a critical part of finding your way. Because feeling lost is such a physical feeling at times for us, taking care of your body becomes one of the most important ways to find yourself and to let go of that feeling. If the idea of lost is kind of more present for you, then you immediately have to look at a lot of your different ideas and beliefs around what feeling found is like. Because as I said, we have these cultural ideas that are running in the background about what it means to be successful in life and to be safe. And you can have an idea that you need to have lots of friends or something like that. But then what does that really mean? Does that mean you need external approval? Does that mean you need certain forms of love, support? Are you afraid of standing on your own? Are you afraid of being independent? Do you not believe that you're able to do things on your own? Right? All these different beliefs create that cage that make you feel cut off. So another aspect of feeling lost at times is a sense of separation, of being cut off. So you can have somebody comes to spiritual path with this issue and they're like, well, if I just have tons of spiritual community around me, right? And they'll immerse themselves in this, or they'll try to find the best spiritual community to make themselves feel good and not lost, right? Now I have my people. Like I hear people say these things to me in their sessions, but that's not what you really want. When we are at peace with ourselves, people can come in our lives and they can go. And we can fully embrace whoever's coming and whatever gifts they have for us. And then we can let them go. Because all relationships are going to come and go. A lot of relationships really are just in our heads anyway. They're ideas. as a brief aside from the topic of being lost, conscious relationships are really about not believing in the relationship. So that each time you come back, you renew and you meet the person where they are then and not who they were before. Most relationships that are unconscious is usually a holding on to ideas about who you are together, what type of friendship you're having, what type of romance you're having, and then trying to make the other person stay that same way or keep giving you a certain feeling that you felt once at a certain part of the relationship. And of course, that's not what relationships are. People are always changing, even when they're trying to not change. It creates immense amount of resistance because when we're not trying to change inside and we're all always changing, it's just how the human being and our bodies at the basic level are. They're always changing, always regenerating themselves. And other people always changing, and so we don't let the relationship grow and change and shift. And sometimes that means for it to end. Sometimes it means momentary separation, sometimes a return. All those types of things, when we're in resistance to that, it creates tremendous pain in a place that could be joyful. I see a couple of you who just recently joined. Welcome. I have a chat pod here. So if you have questions at some point as I'm going, feel free to type down in the chat pod your question. And you have to be logged in on the computer for that. And it is amazing what happens when we start to let go of some of these beliefs. It's just that quality of, you let something go. It's like, I don't have to do that anymore. That sense of release and some relief. I make a distinction here, and some of you know about this distinction. Well, relief is when pressure gets let off an issue, and release is when the issue is gone. So relief is always temporary. So if somebody was really upsetting to you, but you don't deal with whatever the issue is that's upsetting inside of you, then that person will go and you'll feel relief that they're gone. And then somebody else will come and step on that issue inside you again, and you'll be upset again. If you have a release, you can have the same person come back and say or do or whatever the same things before, and you're not upset in the same ways before. Letting go of our ideas and our issues and our beliefs just makes space for more peace. And it's really hard for a lot of people to grasp how troublesome most of our beliefs are. I believe in having useful beliefs. Useful beliefs help guide us. I have a belief that my car will run. But if that for some reason changes, I don't need to hold on to that belief. But generally speaking, I want to believe in my car running. Things that are actually real, you don't need to believe in. You cannot believe in gravity, but if you throw something in the air right now, it will fall down. Your belief has nothing to do with whether that ball or whatever you felt like throwing, piece of gum, is going to just hover or drop. It's going to drop because that's part of what's real. And we honor those aspects of life that are real. We honor the fact that we need to eat. We honor the fact we need clean water. And so a lot of the ways we find ourselves is in that simplification. And once again, these are other things I don't know that other spiritual traditions explain particularly well. We simplify not out of some sort of austere need to have less, right? It's not self-negation. It's not, just giving up everything. People go to these extremes because they, if I have nothing, then I'll be happy. So no, the things that you really want to get rid of are your beliefs and your issues inside, because that sort of simplification lends itself to clarity around simplification in your external life. Every now and then somebody awakens and they're like, and I'm giving away everything. And I'm just like, whoa, hey, let's slow it down a little bit, right? Because the awakened space embraces everything. It doesn't need to get rid of anything. But when we go inside and we're letting go of these different issues, there are certain times where, like, you know what? I don't need like 90 pieces of clothing in my closet. I can let these things go. I can give them away to people who do need them. And when we let go of things that we don't need, it can be really, really freeing. I know I've had some amazing spiritual shifts, because as I was getting clear inside myself, I found some of these kind of physical attachments, like because it's 2 years ago, I was releasing like a bunch of old high school and college papers that I still had in a box for whatever reason. And it felt really freeing, but the deeper thing that was being let go is an aspect of my intellectual self, my old intellectual self, and how I was living in the right or wrong world, right, of academia. And it's just like, right? And so a lot of energy actually came out of that for me. So it was a very mindful letting go of things. I still honor that, I need money, so I didn't give away all my money and things like that, because money, as always, is just a tool. And how we use things is what's more important. And to use tools appropriately, we have to go within. So this going within, as I've said before, that's how we find ourselves. That's how we let go of the sense of being lost. But whenever it comes to you, the encouragement's still the same. It's to breathe into it, to explore. What is this feeling really? What are the ideas actually saying? Because a lot of times what we do is we react. We react to the initial feeling, initial idea, and we try to resolve it quickly. Or sometimes we don't resolve it, right? We just kind of get stuck in a morass of self-pity, right? But that's that next thing to kind of hide from the feeling. We just cover it up now with self-pity. And some people actually really like to feel sad about themselves. Same way some people like to be angry. If you want to find a bunch of people who enjoy being angry, watch all the people who watch news, at least in the US, right? The US news, especially some of the channels, is really angry. It's not happy at all. And some are more fear-based than others. So like some people like to watch that to essentially kind of scare themselves, right? Of all the billions of things that happen today, here are like the 19 things where somebody died, something was exploded, somebody was stabbed, injured, right? These types of things. This is a disagreement going on in your political system again, right? These are ways that people feed into fear. And these are ways where people can get fed into anger and all those types of things that happen. Now, it's not bad to watch the news. I'm not saying be disinformed, because there's that aspect in the spiritual world too. That's like trying to reject anything that feels badly. It's just how we get sucked into it. As I said, it comes back to the how again. How we move from within, or are we just playing out old processes, old ideas in our heads? Hi, Kelly. This is from Kelly, and she says, I found I let go of the story but buried the feelings I didn't know I was, but now I do. Is it common to do this? It seems to be like that for us, Kelly. We seem to go like this. We seem to go with our heads first. We have to get the head right to stop replaying stories, right? That's part of the riptide of emotions and feelings that come up. And then we suddenly find that there's a whole bunch of undealt with feelings. And so usually there's kind of stories and memories there, and then you start to drop into the body. And there's sometimes stories and memories, but sometimes it's just residual tension in the body from how we've experienced something that in the past was traumatic, or how our mind was telling us we should feel under certain circumstances. So when we feel lost, as I said, there's often a feeling in the body that's equated to it. And there could be a quality of craving for some people with that sense of being lost. A craving for something. So if there's a craving, then there's a sense that something is lacking, something is hollow. And so we turn towards that hollowness. We start to see if we can breathe into that space. And usually it feels miserable for a while. And I'm very direct about this. I know my regular students understand this about me. We're not here to mince words. And when we're too busy trying to run from our own misery, we're never going to take care of it. And so you go into it and you breathe it and it dissolves. And that leads towards that release. And that leads towards that release of being lost. And sometimes if we really release that feeling, the whole concept of being lost and found goes away. There's just no problem. Because a lot of times, the very idea of lost is a self-created problem. Self with a small s. Self with a big S doesn't create problems. And that's what you start to touch, or what you start to realize you're touching, because we're always touching it. It's like the ocean, and we're all little icebergs floating on top of it. It's like we're always in contact with the ocean. You're never not in contact with the self, big S. So you're never lost from it. You're never lost from connection. But this isn't repeating. We keep looking for these spaces inside that do feel cut off and separate. Now, feeling cut off and separate is also a different feeling than feeling angry or feeling sad or feeling fear. There is a lot of choice in those feelings. A lot of us chooses that, but the deeper you go, you'll notice that there are just certain responses that just keep kind of happening because it was part of your core programming from 0 to 9 years age. This happens, and you have to retrain the body, say, no, we don't have to be scared if somebody's criticizing me, even if you intellectually know that, right? And maybe you even understand in a very heartfelt way that you can open your heart more when somebody's criticizing, but there's still that clenching in the body. And so you're breathing into that now to retrain it. Say, nope, we don't need to interpret that in this way. And there's probably still some part of the mind that's interpreting it as a threat, but we honor all these different levels, and every level needs to be understood in its way. And the mind is in ideas, the heart is in emotions, and the body is in physical sensation. Another question, I have moments of clarity and then a downward spiral, and then I get confused with how to come out of that. Seem to be questioning myself a lot if this is the right path. This is just ego and fear. Well, you said an important thing there, and this is a private question, this way you can't see it. Is this the right path? Who determines right or wrong? Where is that coming from? What is right or wrong? You have to look at that because that's part of your rule maker. And so long as that rule maker is standing around, it's creating rules and guidelines and directives that you don't even understand. I know, like, in my own process of looking inside, this is years ago. Obviously, I'm pretty clear what my rules are, where they came from. I had no idea. So that's the encouragement there. It's like when you start to feel like you're in a downward spiral and you feel confused, see if you can notice, what am I thinking I want here? Why am I doubting this? Why am I looking for something? And then breathe into the confusion. Breathe into the downward spiral, because oftentimes, the more you get into your inner work, you start to go through these expansions and contractions, where you expand and you relax into the space of being, of just being you, being in that space of I am. And the whole not okay goes away. And for those of you who just joined you, the earlier part of this webinar, I was talking about this. I am not okay is the basis of great pain and self-hatred in most of humanity. And we have to work on this not. And so part of this question, the right or wrong is part of the not. It's actually getting in the way because there's nothing wrong with you. In the awakened space and the space of clarity and presence we all have inside, that we're all connected to, doesn't reject confusion. We just start to notice, oh, the mind is confused about something. And we breathe into that. So what does confusion feel like emotionally? What does it feel like in my body? And we explore it. And as you explore it, then you can go from there. And the next thing becomes available to understand. Let me know if that was a helpful reply. So we've covered a number of different qualities of being lost. There's the awakened space where you feel lost because you're still holding on to the old ideas, the old unconscious ideas, and you're trying to justify them or keep them in accordance to the truth that you now feel, and that doesn't work. There's always qualities of feeling lost in the body that I encourage you to explore in yourself. There's that deeper feeling of loss when we're not awakened and we just feel really stagnant. So that can be a very heavy, dense quality, something else to explore. Say like, okay, so what's weighing me down? What am I sinking into here? When you're really early on, that's when, exploring spiritual traditions and having new ideas, having new experiences is really helpful. Further down the line, as some of you are going, experiences and ideas are not going to help you, right? Because they're all transitory. But this is one of the ways we respect our own process. We don't try to do somebody else's process. We don't try to be like somebody. That will also make you feel really lost and confused. But we respect our process for what we need now. So the early sense of really being lost, completely caught up in the world's ideas, but just kind of having that sense that things aren't right, that's when having an experience stepping out of your usual patterns in life. So you go on a yoga retreat, for instance, or you come to webinars like this, and you can do webinars with other teachers. And YouTube is a gift to the spiritual world. It brings up a lot of different things because it's technology. So there's plenty of things that it's not a gift to the world, but to the spiritual world right now, we have so many spiritual teachers now that are just a click of a button away. I mean, how awesome is that? That always gets me really excited. We weren't doing that. Maybe we were doing it 10 years ago now, because YouTube's been around a little bit and all of our broadbands were fast enough, I think, maybe around 2005, maybe, to watch videos. But certainly we weren't doing it 20 years ago. And so this is a beautiful tool. I know this is a sidebar to the whole spiritual thing, but this is a beautiful aspect that we have right now. I encourage you to embrace it. You have so much amazing stuff available to you, but also don't try to absorb everything. Try to find a couple, either traditions or teachers that really work for you and stick with them. Unless you're really good with your intuition, that will confuse you more, because you'll just have different information and different ways of speaking the truth being shared with you that you don't really know how to parse through. The stronger you are with your intuition, it's easier to find the pieces that you need and bring them in a meaningful way. And that's a gift I've always had, but I recognize that not everybody has that. And that's okay, because we all develop in our own time. Another question or comment here. My usual feeling for spiritually lost is the feeling of the need to do something, for instance. Now I feel the need to reach out to others. Mostly I feel lost because I don't entirely understand this. Well, reaching out and supporting others is always a good thing. Usually a good thing. There's a couple instances where there's times to bring more of that energy in. So I would encourage you to find a way you can volunteer, to do something simple and explore that feeling there. Now, doing something is a very problematic thing in Western culture, because in Western culture, we've been taught that we are valuable by what we do. Some of our greatest insults have to do with not doing something or being lazy. It has a very heavy negative connotation that goes along with the sense that you're good for nothing, which is more ideas piled on top. So there are a lot of different layers that are very powerful in Western society. It says you must keep doing to be a worthwhile human being, right? So that's all part of the I am not okay. That's what it's saying. If you don't do things, then you are not okay. So that's another aspect to sit with. So I think for you, and one thing I want to emphasize to everybody here is I speak to the person. So some of what I'm saying isn't applicable to you. And some of you need to just sit and be more than this, but for this is sent also privately to me. In this instance, my encouragement is to explore a little bit of maybe volunteerism. Not a lot. You don't want to expend tons of energy doing stuff all the time, but also spending some time in meditation to sit with this feeling of why I have to do things and see what comes up. And if the lost feeling gets worse, explore that. What is it feeling like emotionally? Does it feel sad? Does it feel scared? Right? These are qualities to play with and to explore in yourself, so you understand what's trying to run the show inside. Thanks for the question. Let me know if it was helpful. And what other questions do people have today? Feeling lost is an interesting feeling. But so long as you get good at turning the mirror back around and say, well, what do I want? And why do I want that? And feeling into your feelings, into your physical sensations to see what's going on is very powerful. That sense of hollowness, that's an amazing one, because when you crack through that, it's just so natural that it just evaporates. That sense of craving that can be in some qualities of being lost. Craving and desire has a whole bunch of different manifestations for us, and it comes out of that not okay, that sense that we're cutting ourselves off from just being, that's not enough. And being is always enough. The being isn't lazy, but it definitely doesn't expend as much energy as we think we need to. We're actually wasting huge amounts of energy, consuming things, creating things that we don't need. Hi, Matt. Another question or comment here. It says, hi, Jim. Last week I heard the expression, the eye in which God sees you and the eye with which God sees you is the same eye. The transformation was enormous. I see that it has always been me. My concern is that there's really so much energy within me that I can't concentrate. It's very difficult to work. Any tips? To join with the energy, let it do what it needs to do. My experience is that all shifts are temporary, and that the more grounded we are, and I suppose that's the real thing here, is not letting it just be energy appear in your heart. As it drops into the body, you just get very clear and grounded. And I use myself as an example regularly because clearly I'm awake and able to function and answer questions and to do work and things like that. But I also honor my process and my shifts. So there's certain times where it's just like, all right, it's time to knock off and lie on my couch and just let it do its thing. And that's one of the bigger things that happens for those of us who awaken, Matt. You just get more and more appreciation for your process, and you go into it more directly. And because you go into it more directly with less resistance, things actually go a little bit quicker. Now, I don't want you to hold on to the quicker idea, because that's also Western idea, like quicker is better. We want to do it quicker. It depends on the issue, depends on the energy shift, depends on what you are growing into, Matt. I don't know what you're growing into. Well, on a deeper level, I do, right? But I don't feel like intuiting that right now and interpreting it. But as all of you know who I am. This is another sidebar to the question. All of you know who you are and who everyone else is. It's not actually hidden. But we live in this world where giraffes, elephants, monkeys, and ostriches are trying to act like mice, right? So the mouse is the small little thing that's running around trying to live its life in a specific certain way. And some people actually are mice, and that's fine for them to be mice. So this is the idea that, some people do thrive in working the 9-to-5 world, right? Not everybody does, but some people do. So I'm just pointing to that deeper truth that we all know who and what we are. And the more we just accept this is who I am, even if we don't necessarily have words for it. Some of you will have words for who you are. But words, as I said earlier, only point to something. But in joining with that, it typically makes the shifts go a little bit easier, and it leads to greater clarity in your mind. And then with the greater clarity in mind, you start to find out, am I doing work that I really want to do? Is this elephant work, right? Or am I doing mouse work, right? And I'm saying this in a playful way. And it's not to deride mouse work or anything. It's to point to the things that we're doing that don't serve us and aren't really how we would naturally behave if we allowed ourselves to. So if that becomes the case, your shifts are actually going to make it even harder to work in this stuff, because you're going to realize I have a trunk and I'm trying to dig little mouse burrows, and this is ridiculous. And that will lead to transitions that will push you into deeper fears of the unknown, fears of survival that maybe have been hanging out for a while. Last comment from that. I find myself laying down and directing the energy with my will to the parts that are painful. Should I stop that and just let it do what it has to do? I would encourage you. This is always an intuitive question, and the answer will change for you depending on the thing, Matt. But being in the receptive space is probably good for you. It sounds like you have plenty of active force that you can actively direct. So be receptive, but breathe into whatever the pain is. So not forcefully breathing, but just breathing into it and focusing lightly on it, and allow things to move. Thank you for your question and comments. You're welcome. What else are people thinking about? And I do want to make a side note that being awakened isn't better than not being awakened. What ultimately, we're all in the conscious path. The conscious path is the human path we all must take in the spiritual world here, which is to gradually get to know ourselves, to gradually grow, deal with issues, repattern old instinctual patterning, old family patterning, social patterning, right? All this stuff that's been unhealthy, letting go of beliefs. That's all part of the conscious path. The awakened space simply is just kind of like a floodlight being turned on inside. That happens for some of us. So wherever you are in your path is perfect. Enjoy it. And everything is always trade-offs. Because what Matt's referring to, he doesn't have any real, you have control, but you also have no control of the awakened space. When you're on the conscious path, you can choose to chip away at some of these issues a little at a time, in your own time. You can make it a little bit more convenient. As a spiritual teacher, I want you to make it as inconvenient to your ego as possible, because I don't want you to stay trapped any longer than you have to. That's just where I am. But I also recognize that it's kind of nice to feel like you have that quality of being able to gently guide things, where in awakening you really are just kind of merged with what is. There are deeper flows that move through you, and you are just now in that current, and you must trust it. You can try and dig your way out, but it's miserable to do so. I see people try. They find a way to get to a plateau. It's a strange mix of unconsciousness and awakened awareness. And consciousness is just the things we don't know. Awakened awareness doesn't eradicate all unconsciousness, just shines a light on it. So now you know that you're being an idiot. Now you know that something doesn't work for you. So we're all perfect and beautiful wherever we are, in our conscious awareness, awakened or not. Feeling found often becomes no feeling at all. It's like there can be kind of those initial euphorias of that inner finding, the initial relaxation. But one of the metaphors I was using in another email recently was like, if you go from living in the cold tundra to living to the Bahamas, the first time you do that, that's amazing. But if you're always living in the Bahamas, it's just where you are. And the same goes with being found, the sense that you're here now. You're okay here now. And so for the ego that needs these distinctions, these different points to reference against, so it's like, all right, here's the tundra, here's the Bahamas. As you sit more in the Bahamas, you start to lose that other reference point. So this just becomes what is. And the only time that you realize you're sitting in the Bahamas is, if for some reason you decide to go back to the tundra or someplace else. And that's the expansion contraction metaphor in another way, right? Where the expansion, more and more are expanded that you become. It's just what is. It's not a big deal. So there's another reason why we don't want to get caught up in goals or like always feeling blissful in a certain way, right? Because a lot of the blissful feelings people have to do with that reference point, that differential. So the less you have a distinction between up and down, right? This is high, this is low. The more everything is just kind of in that space of peace, blissful feelings aren't as big of a deal. It's just like, oh, I felt good. Do people have other questions? Oh, here's one. So this all sit in private. It becomes quite overwhelming to have so much stuff coming up and can feel quite scary. Do you suggest breathing to everything that comes up? I found myself getting stuck with the same things coming up, and I feel I have let go, but then it comes up over and over. Especially lately, I'm feeling uncomfortable around people. It's almost like I feel so clear and awake that I am seeing through or something. That is the only way I can explain it. I'm shying away from a lot. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. I've always been a sensitive soul, and now feel extra sensitive, and this can become quite tiring. Maybe I need to try how to use my energy. No, using your energy isn't the issue right now, because that gets into control, gets into ego ideas of being safe, because that's really what's kind of at the point of this issue, is you don't feel safe. So as far as feeling seen, allow yourself to feel seen. The first time you take off all your clothes and stand in public, it feels like a big deal. Obviously, I'm not literally suggesting you do this, because unfortunately, we have laws in some parts of the world against this, which is ridiculous because it's not harmful to anyone. Putting nudism aside, the idea is the sense that you're naked and feeling life, right? Because part of what clothing does is to numb or to block your sense of feeling. And we do it, to protect ourselves from winter and the elements, things like that. It has a very important function, or from the sun. But when you peel away these layers that have been protecting you, you become more sensitive and you feel very seen. As we relax into that space, that level of vulnerability feels great, because it requires no effort on our part. It requires effort to hide ourselves, and that's exhausting. That's really what's tiring. However, the more open you are, the more you're going to sense where your issues are, and you're more easily triggered. So this actually forces you further on your spiritual growth and your spiritual development when your issues get triggered so easily. That's just part of what happens as we open up more and more. So generally speaking, I encourage focus, patience, and dedication. These are not new spiritual ideas, and there's a reason everybody keeps reinforcing it, because focus allows you to pick one issue and notice what's coming up. If things are feeling scary, a part of you is determining that this is a threat. This feeling is a threat. So that's a judgment on top of the actual feeling you're working with. The encouragement there is to start by looking into what is the judgment, that why is this scary? It's just a feeling. You're not dying. I think sometimes new feelings are always immediately equated by the body and the mind as we're going to die. Like, this sounds like an overstatement, but think about it. Like, it's just like a feeling of feeling lost, or feeling overwhelmed. So that feeling will come and go. Emotions are always in motion. They will never stop being in motion. But the meaning we assign to them, can help let us calm down more, to stop recreating a lot of them. And then the remaining ones just come and go as they want. Remember, emotions are in large part physiological stuff, biochemical stuff that's getting released in the body. Fear in particular has a whole bunch of different neurotransmitters and hormones that get let go into our body to prepare us to really run or fight or freeze. So breathe into one thing, focus, have patience and discipline with it. And anytime something starts to get interpreted as scary, that's a good thing to journal about. So what am I actually afraid of? Am I just not liking the feeling? Thanks for the question and comment. Hi, Simone. Hi, Jim. Feeling lost is meant, for the most part, not being able to release pain and fear just by breathing into the sensations and not fighting. I'm curious what that feels in your body. Do you know? It might be something to explore. I'm not even sure that's feeling lost. It just feels more like feeling weak. The sense that you can't control anything, so the part of you still wants to control things. And this is, like I said, there's no timetable for these issues. Even when we go into them, they last as long as they last. I think that's all I really kind of have to say on that, Simone. I would just encourage you to breathe in the feeling of loss and explore that more, because it sounds like it's coming up on top of all the pain and fear, or maybe part of it. So you never know what's the thread you need to go down deeper into the issue at hand. Hi, Kavitha. Can you give me some pointers to go deep? I feel like I have released a lot over the past few years, and kudos to you for that, by the way. I like to often pause and give people, compliments for the work they've done themselves, because you're never going to be able to point to anybody else. This is what I cleared. Here, look in the back. That's 50 buckets of fear I got rid of, right? Look, it's gone. That used to be inside. We don't get to do that. Ultimately, this is, conceit to the ego. But we all need a little bit of encouragement, from time to time. Sometimes I need a little bit of encouragement to remind us, like, oh, crap, I've come a lot further than I realized. So that's great. I'm glad you've done that work for your Kavitha. Done that for yourself, Kavitha. It's powerful work, as I know you already know. She goes, and now there seem to be fewer releases, and they come and go away as soon as I see them, and I'm left with space for more love. How can I go deeper from this point, Jim? It's your body. So any of the blogs that I've written, especially this year, dealing with the animal instinctual body, there's just these old programs. If you're finding yourself more and more just completely at peace, then don't worry about it. That's not a problem. Then the issue is the mind is creating a problem out of having no problems, which is also a blog post that's up. So let me know if you need clarification. Feel free to email me about that too, because we're coming to the end and there's a couple more questions. But good job. I'm glad you're feeling freer, more full of love. That's a good sign. Hi, Mari. Growing up in space that is so conditioned by society's view of what is and what isn't right, one can lose their sense of self. Absolutely. Conditioned instead by what is socially appropriate, part of feeling lost for me entails figuring out who I am. How can I work through this? It's a sense of the lack of self-identity. Then you breathe into the lack of self-identity. Say, why do I need this? Who am I trying to be? And I think that's just really kind of the next step. Because usually what happens in that very question, at this point in where you're growing, there's still plenty of ideas that you need to be a somebody. And so for you, please search on Be Nobody on my blog. So I just put that down in the chat pod. Kavitha, for you, there's the Animal Instinctual. I don't even remember the full title. It's in May. Animal Instinctual Body in May 2015 blog post. And then there's How to Release Physical Issues. So those are a couple more. So I apologize if I'm saying anybody's name wrong. Please forgive me on that. So I think it's Karanya, and as I said, I apologize if I didn't get that right. This constant knowing feeling is often thought to be boring in our society. The extreme bliss or sense of victory from losing and finding is often seen as a brave thing. What are your thoughts? Is this something you're feeling right now? So this is another aspect of your spiritual teacher here, is that I like to speak to what you're feeling. I don't want to get into ideas around what other society says about things or broader beliefs, because then the tendency is to keep building beliefs around other beliefs we have inside. And I'm always more interested in going to the root. And one of the best ways to get to any root issue, I guess this goes back to Kavitha's question, going deeper, is what are you feeling now? If you're feeling boredom right now, that's interesting, because something is not liking this current moment. It's rejecting it in some way. It wants more stimulation. And it's almost kind of like breaking stimulation addictions. That's a different thing and a different topic. So if you can explain that, this will have to be our last question. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments as we're coming to the end. But if you can explain a little bit more about, if this is something you're feeling right now, then I can, respond to that, and that furthers your own process. So, wow, make a little bit of space for Kanya to ask that question. Doing my usual end of the webinar screen share here. And so here's the blog post I've been referring to. Some of you probably have read it. It's Facing the Abyss of Self-Hatred. And that's where we get into this issue of I am not okay. And it's terrible because of what it does to us. And for those, as I said, who'd like to donate to me, I always appreciate it. It's free, but you don't have to. But if you want to, here's the donate to the blog button over here. And of course, those who don't already know, I do one-on-one sessions. And that's just a beautiful way to go deeper, go into the present moment of what's arising. That's really how I do it. It's like whatever is arising for somebody in that moment is the issue that we need to deal with, and that's what we go into. So those are the usual spiel that I have to offer. Thanks everyone for coming. You're all very welcome. Okay, well, it sounds like there's no last questions. So thanks for coming. I appreciate your time, and feel free to come again. The next webinar will be back at 6 o'clock in 2 weeks, and it's going to be about body changes after awakening.